Alright, let's finish up the American Revolutionary War with the defeat of the New York Plan and their inability to capture New York and cut off New England from the rest of the 13 colonies. The British realize that they need a new strategy, so they're going to turn their attention to the South. They feel that support for the British is much stronger in the South. There's much more loyalists, and they can gain kind of a foothold in North America and be much more effective that way. So they're going to land in South Carolina. They're going to capture Charleston Harbor here and actually capture thousands of colonial soldiers. The U.S. Southern Army there is almost entirely defeated, and it was a pretty big disaster for the colonists. Washington still has his army up in the north, but he's kind of stuck there trying to keep the British in Philadelphia. So he's going to send south a couple generals. Nathaniel Greene is his personal favorite general, and a guy by the name of Daniel Morgan. Daniel Morgan is kind of a stuff of mythology almost. He's just like, he's from the backwoods of Virginia. He's a frontiersman, kind of a hard-fighting, roughneck kind of guy. Once punched a superior officer, for which he received, I think, 100 lashes or something like that. So he is really rough tumble, tough guy, the perfect guy to go out there and give the British a good fight. Now, he's going to engage the British Army under a guy named Banastre Tarleton, who was infamous for his cruelty, at a place called Cowpens. Now, the problem that Daniel Morgan has is his force is mostly militia. And again, militia are mostly untrained soldiers, not soldiers, but common guys acting as soldiers. And they never really have been able to stand toe-to-toe with the British. So, Daniel Morgan's got a little problem. How is he going to be able to defeat a superior British force with this militia? So he comes up with a pretty clever strategy. He goes to his militiamen and says, this is what I want you to do. I want you to fire 2 shots. Okay, so you fire, you reload, you fire again, and then I want you to retreat. That's all you got to do. Alright? So that's exactly what happens in the battle. He lines his militia up out in front here, and as the British approach, he has them fire 2 shots, and they do. So they fire once, they reload, they fire again, and then they retreat. To which the British see this and think to themselves, oh look, you know, the militia are running away like they always do. We got this battle won. So they pursue them, trying to cut them down as they run away. But this is all part of Daniel Morgan's strategy, because he has positioned himself in the battlefield in front of this big hill here. Okay? And behind the hill, he has the rest of his army. So he has them stationed there where the British can't see them. So as the British are pursuing the fleeing militia that they think that they have this battle won, they're running up the hill, thinking we got this won. And so they get to the top of the hill and see that there is the regular American force waiting for them. Now they're in trouble, because now they're disorganized, they're no longer in their ranks, and they are now cut down. The militia reform and actually march all the way around and flank them from the side. And this is a huge victory for the American cause. Banastre Tarleton is forced to flee. He rejoins with the main British army under Lord Cornwallis, and they engage Nathaniel Morgan in a large battle and defeat them, but suffer so many casualties that they are forced to retreat. And they go to a place where they had always thought was safe. They go to the sea at the place called Yorktown. Now, here's one of those questions I was talking about. So on a piece of paper, write down the answer. Which battle convinced the French to join the American cause? Okay, so that's number 1. So we come now to the last battle of the American Revolutionary War, the battle at Yorktown. So Lord Cornwallis escapes to Yorktown. It's in Virginia. It's right by the ocean. The ocean has been a place of safety. The British Navy has been superior throughout this fight, but now something is different. The French have shown up in full force with their fleet. The Americans up to this point have been kind of disappointed with the naval and military contribution of the French. The French have actually been fighting the British all around the world and have been helping out the Americans significantly, but the Americans are kind of like, we want you here helping us out directly. But finally the French fleet shows up, and here is Yorktown, the York River, the British positioned here thinking that they can just be reinforced from the sea, but the French Navy shows up just in time to cut off the British Navy, and they fight actually a pretty epic naval battle for control of the York River, with the French eventually emerging victorious. So the French Navy cuts them off by the sea, and a combined force of American and French army under George Washington controlling the Americans and Count Rochambeau controlling the French lines surround them via the land. And they bring up heavy cannons, and they basically just bombard the city into submission. Finally, after realizing that Cornwallis realizes he's totally cut off and there's really no chance of victory, he surrenders. Him and his entire army is a massive defeat. And this is the battle that really convinces the British that, look, this just isn't worth it. We're not winning. We're wasting way too much material. This isn't going to be something that we can win in the near future, and it's just not worth it. And just like that, it's over. Washington, having to endured just years and years of anxiety and hardships trying to fight through this war. Who knows the exuberance that he must have felt, but that was also tempered by great sadness as well. George Washington never had any biological children, but he did have 2 children through his marriage with Mary Washington, as she became his son Jack, who he was extremely protective of, had been asking to fight throughout the war, wanting to fight, let me fight. And George Washington forbid him from fighting. Finally, on his way to the battle at Yorktown, he stopped off at Mount Vernon, his home in Virginia. And Jack asked him again, can I fight? And Washington, feeling that this battle would be one that would be relatively few casualties, finally let his son fight. And Washington was right in the fact that Yorktown was a pretty lopsided victory for the American colonists. There weren't that many casualties. Unfortunately, one of them was his only son. So Washington must have been this huge mix of emotions of relief and happiness that they had finally defeated the British, and this had to have been it. This had to have been the final victory, and then extreme sadness over the loss of his son. And then George Washington did something great that seems kind of insignificant, but it wasn't at all. He went home. He was the general of an army that conquered essentially North America, the colonies, the United States of America from the British, and he could have become king. He should have become king. People wanted him to become king. Throughout all of world history, if you were the general, if you were the guy who conquered a foreign territory, you became king. But that wasn't Washington. Washington understood what this was all about, and after the victory, he went back to the Continental Congress. He turned in his commission and said, mission accomplished, I'm going home. And he went back to Mount Vernon, and as far as he was concerned, he has done his public service, and he was going to spend the rest of his life at his beloved home. But as we know, America is going to call him back into duty again. So the Battle of Yorktown, American victory. The next step, our next unit, now that we have a new country, we actually have to make it work. We have to create a government, and at first it doesn't go so well. So we're going to talk about the evolution of the United States government next. Make sure you're prepared for the test that's coming up. Review the other videos as well. And the last question for you to answer, what was the first battle of the American